Well, as I mentioned before, the audience is primarily going to be people who have been affected by infidelity in some way. Either they've had an affair, they've been probably the majority of my clients. I mean, people coming in of people who've been hurt, betrayed, or couples that are trying to figure out how do we move through this. So, Nancy, I think one of the things that attracted me to you and started our conversation is that you do like to help people um, move forward. And part of what you do is even helping people understand how some of the stuff from their past continues to affect them now. Your work is broader than just infidelity. I mean, you just focus on anybody that's maybe stuck or needs to change or wants to move forward. But you and I have talked about specifically maybe some of the ways what you do fits people who have been involved in infidelity. And a lot of the resources out there and a lot of the work's done focuses on the need for the betrayer to change. And I want to upfront acknowledge, I agree with that. I believe that a lot of times when people get stuck or relationships get stuck, that has to do with the inability or the unwillingness of the person who caused the affair to really do the deeper work that they need to do to change, to be able to reestablish trust and so forth. So that's a given. But as you and I talked, I was really interested maybe to explore a little bit more in regards to what do we say to the person that's been betrayed? I mean, they're not a passive participant in this healing either. There's work that they need to do. What are some of your thoughts around that?
Well, I think that it's interesting. I think that your marriage is a co-creation. And so nobody lives in a vacuum. That doesn't mean that the betrayed doesn't feel that what the partner did was boundaryless and went outside what the other party would have done. But once that's said and done, there's work to be done on both sides. So even energetically, you called this person into your life for things that you need to heal. And so everything happens for a reason. Let's work on that. Let's see what's on your side of the street, and let's see what is on their side of the street, and the co-creation of why maybe your relationship needed to implode so that you could heal from it, repair, and then your 2.0 relationship will look totally different than the 1.0 in a much healthier way.
Yeah, that your comment, maybe it needed to implode. I mean, I look back on my own experience and I can look back with regret and say, man, I wish I'd figured out my stuff before making some really bad choices in my life. And yet what was true of me is true of a lot of people, a lot of relationships, that sometimes the hard lessons to learn may not be learned until the other side of significant pain, significant failure, significant loss. And so there's, some sense on the other side of all the wounds of infidelity, you can look at it and say, what is it that we need to learn from all of this? Now let's assume that the betrayer is, off and they're getting help and they're doing their work. What are some of the specific things that you would encourage someone who's been through this pain, who's been through betrayal, and now is looking at a broken marriage, a broken relationship, and instead of just saying, well, I hope the other person fixes what they broke, what are some of the things that they might need to consider, address, or work on in their life?
Well, I think that the first steps are allowing the betrayed to ask all the questions because right now the rug's been pulled out from underneath them. They don't know what's true, what's not true. They're rethinking their future, and they're also questioning, well, gee, when you said you were here, where were you really? And when you told me you loved me, but you were still sleeping with somebody else, how could you tell me that? How can I ever trust that you love me? There's a lot of work that gets to be done with the betrayer and the betrayed together with a coach or a therapist. And the betrayed gets to ask every question they need to ask. And the betrayer needs to answer. and be honest and fess up to everything, no matter how gory or how, why do you need to know that? Or, and then I also believe that the betrayed gets to set up some boundaries. Well, yeah, I want access to your phone, and I want access to your computer. And maybe I want a thing on the phone, like, so I can track where you are. There needs to be some safety measures for a agreed upon amount of time if you want to heal the relationship.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I would hope in that scenario that the person that broke the trust would be the one that steps in and takes responsibility for that. I mean, as the boundaries get established, as some accountability is set in, that they're the ones that are coming and saying, I know these are the things that you need from me. And the, like you're saying, the betrayer is saying, let's talk about access to phone and all these things that I don't feel safe and secure with right now. But I hope they're not left in the place of having to demand it and make it happen and so forth. I hope that they can be very clear about, here's what I need. And I would hope in that scenario that the betrayed, the one who broke the trust, would step in and be willing to say, yeah, that's my responsibility to do all those things. I always get a little concerned when, it feels like the one who's betrayed has to be the boundary keeper, and they're the ones establishing the boundaries and maintaining it. The other person sitting there rolling their eyes, okay, if you need me to do that, I guess I will. I mean, that gets a little bit upside down, but I agree with you. Yeah, getting to the truth, getting to the necessary truth, establishing boundaries and some sense of accountability so that there's a safety and security there. Once those things have kind of been established, then what?
Well, before I move on, I just want to say this, that's a pretty view, but it doesn't happen because the betrayed doesn't just give up their rights, right? They kind of do go a little kicking and screaming, like, really, you need that? They don't want to give up their rights. And so it has not been my experience that they willingly say, hey, babe, I'm going to open up my phone and I'm going to give you this and I'm going to check in, when I go, I'm going to give you the phone number of every hotel I go in for work. And they may agree to it, but they don't offer it up.
I would agree with you at the beginning that because none of us likes that sense of, oh, now I'm being controlled, giving up my freedom and so forth. I guess my only observation is that eventually, if that doesn't happen, if the person who is the one who betrayed is the one that's always kind of reluctantly, okay, tell me what I have to do, and that shift doesn't happen, I'm not saying that relationship is doomed or that they're bound to have another affair. I'm just saying those are the relationships that I look at 3 or 4 years down the road, and I don't see the healing that you'd wish would happen. They still seem kind of stuck because, again, it puts the one who's betrayed kind of in the role of, now I'm responsible for defining what needs to be the security of this relationship. So I'm agreeing with you at the beginning. It's rare that the person who did the betrayal steps in and says, hey, I'm taking charge here. But I do think that's something that, at least, as in my involvement with them, is, hey, take ownership of that. You need to take over responsibility for that and figure out why it's important for you to be open, to be vulnerable, and to protect the trust of your relationship. I just think healing happens a lot more securely when that trust transition takes place.
I agree. And I think that once all of that's been done, what I finally say to the betrayed is, you have agency here. Yeah. And if you're choosing to take your partner back or keep your partner, then you put these things in place, and we're going to work on you, and we're going to work on the relationship, and you're both going to get a clean slate, because your partner can't stay in the doghouse for the rest of your life, because once you make that choice to stay, then you're abdicating keeping them in the doghouse for the rest of their life. You have agency. You're making a decision. I want this partner. This partner has cheated on me, but I want to stay. And if you want to stay, which I'm in no means telling you not to, then let's dig down. Let's do the work so that the relationship 2.0 does not look like relationship 1.0.
Yeah. So I really like how you're saying that if you choose to stay, because they could make the other choice. I mean, their choice could be, I'm out. I will never trust you again, or I can't get past this, or for whatever reason, they have the right
Right,
to leave.
right,
But if they're
right,
choosing to stay, then there's something that they carry a joint responsibility in rebuilding something again. I don't
right.
know how often you see it, but I see it fairly frequently that the person who's been betrayed, even a year or two down the road, they're just kind of sitting back and they're saying to the other person, expecting them to do all the work. Now, you
Right.
said you put it in terms of you can't make that decision that I want to stay and work on this marriage and do that with the attitude of, but you're going to stay in the doghouse for who knows how long. There
Right.
has to be this willingness to, okay, I'm going to let you out of the doghouse. I mean, that starts to sound a little bit to me like maybe forgiveness. Is that part of that process, do you
Well,
think?
yeah, you have to forgive. You know what it is? I think, yes, there's forgiveness, but more than forgiveness is recognizing you had a role in what happened. And listen, some guys just are cheaters, right? I mean,
Okay.
some women, some men are just cheaters. And so it's not really fair to say that the other person did something wrong to contribute. But generally, a marriage is in trouble. Let's just talk, or let's just say this. Let's not talk about the addicted sexual
Habitual.
abuser.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's talk about a marriage that really, it got stale, it got old. His or her needs were not being met. They weren't being seen and heard.
Okay. Yeah. Because that is
Something
definitely one of
happened.
the ways in which affairs are kind of born out of
Exactly,
that
exactly.
vulnerability of a marriage that's kind of become disconnected, disappointing, or whatever. So that's
Right.
the scenario we're talking about right now. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Because because there are I don't want to add more pain to a betrayed person who's with a habitual, womanizer or, serial sex person who, regardless of the marriage, is going to do what they're going to do. We
Yeah.
can't, but let's just say that I can show the couple how they each contributed, right? Well, you never really made your needs met. Like if you're an anxious attached person or conflict avoidant and you never tell your partner what you need, but then you're unhappy and resentful and blow up and the marriage is a mess, you have to take responsibility for that.
Mm.
And also the one who leaves. If you are unhappy, how about we talk about it and we work on it first to see if you can get your needs met, you can learn vulnerability, intimacy, communication. And if you're both two ships sailing in opposite directions and one of you cheated, that's just what came out of the fact that you were already two ships sailing in different directions.
Yeah.
So
You often look at the person who's been betrayed and they want to stay in a relationship or in a marriage. But when that attitude is, yeah, but you had the affair, I didn't, that's your fault. And in a sense, I agree with that. I mean, the person that chose to betray, they're 100% responsible for that choice. They're, like you're saying, there were alternatives you could have taken and you didn't take that.
right.
But you're also saying, yeah, but the context in which it happened in the scenario we're talking about is a context where there are already problems in the relationship. That wasn't one person's problem. That's both of their problems. And so the healing of that relationship is going to be something that they both participate in and
It's a
are a part of.
revamping.
Yeah.
It's
So
a revamping.
yeah. So the one thing for the person who is betrayed, you've said, is that there needs to be this willingness to come into that arrangement with the agreement. I'm not coming with the attitude, you're just going to stay in the doghouse. I mean, I'm a part of this process. I have to be part of fixing it too. What are some of the things that you would work with that individual or the couple together in learning, in figuring out how to address, what are some of the
Yeah.
common things that come up?
Well, there's a number of things because sometimes, I don't know what the situation is, right? Sometimes there's real PTSD, like the the other person lives in the same town,
Yeah.
and they might bump into them, or they might go someplace that the partner knows that their partner was with that you know. So so in those cases, you have to do some like somatic work, and you have to do some, meditation and forgiveness work, so that you actually learn how to regulate your own nervous system as it gets dysregulated, as it will. First of all, infidelity is not just sexual. I have couples that have gambling issues, and the partner thinks that as soon as the betrayed, the betrayer isn't where they said they were on any given moment, or, said you were going to return these things at the store, and now I see them in your car. So where were you really? It brings up all kinds of things, even if it's totally innocent.
Yeah.
So there's all of those things that you still have to work on. And then you have to work on making sure that there's clear boundaries for both of you. There's clear how to communicate, how to get your needs met, how to be a listener and a speaker, how to do all of the different tools that I teach you, so that communication stays open. Because if communication gets bogged down again, then, stuff's going to happen again. So you have to slowly gain trust back. The betrayed person has to become trustworthy. And yet you actually have to do your own work around agency, that I'm in it. I've chosen to stay in it. I'm going to forgive them, and I'm going to slowly learn how to trust again. And I'm going to ask for what I need. I'm not going to swallow my feelings. I'm not going to swallow my needs. And I'm going to learn how to be relationally generous, and I'm going to learn how to receive and give, and all of the tools that we teach just in a relationship that didn't do well, even though nobody's cheated, are the same tools. They're all the same tools to try to heal what didn't happen in relationship 1.0.
You mentioned two things that are unique to betrayal, that whether it seems, that it's that the person who's betrayed should have any responsibility to do anything at all. The fact is they do. You mentioned two things, the forgiveness, and even though the other person has a responsibility to earn back trust, the person who's betrayed has to be willing to risk trusting them again. You talked about those things. And then on top of the foundation, as they, work on dealing with the betrayal and working trust, these other things that were maybe missing or got off track in the relationship before, having to attend to those to build something that's well, you use the term marriage 2.0, I think, or relationship 2.0. It's not just going back to what you had before. It's something that's different from that.
No, it's actually, I do really well with getting both parties to recognize that this relationship needed a bomb, and you got it. It needed it. It's exactly what you called in, and now let's make it better.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is probably hard for a lot of people who are betrayed to say, like, what? I didn't need this. My marriage didn't need this. It reminds me of the title of one book. The woman, after her husband's betrayal, wrote a book that said, my husband's affair was the best thing that ever happened to me. And at first they're going, what are you talking about? But I think she was talking about the same thing you are. Like, this is the change we needed. And too bad it took the bomb going off, but now we're left with, boy, this is all messed up. How do we build something new or something different than we had before?
I have found in my experience that the betrayed partner gets it. That they understand that they weren't an innocent bystander when the accident happened, and they're willing to do their side of the street. And so either it's the way I unfold it, the way I bring it up, but it's also hopeful. There's hope there that we are going to come out of the other side of this stronger than ever. And for that to happen, we both have to do our own side of the street work.
Now, Nancy, I want to ask you about something. So I know you wrote a book several years ago, Bigger, Better, Braver, I think is the one title of it.
Yeah.
And I know up front, I don't have a copy of the book. I haven't read it, but I kind of read, things you've said about it and trying to understand, the message of the book. And I think you really spend time helping people understand what it means to um, experience a bigger version of themselves, not to be caught in the fear, those things that keep them
Right.
hesitant, to live out a bigger version of themselves. And not only do you write about it, I think you've lived it. You've done some things in your life that are the bigger and braver choices that have made life fuller for you. Uh, I have my own way of saying that, like the story we're telling with our lives. And I think it's important. And I just wonder, how do you fold that message on? And again, let's focus on the person who is betrayed. For
Mhm.
some, they're sitting there in that wound and thinking, wow, my future's been ruined. I mean, everything that I thought was going to be ahead of me is now just, it's up in smoke. And I don't know what's left. How do you take that message of your book, the message you've tried to live out, and encourage them with something like that? Is it really reasonable to say to them, there's an opportunity here for something even better, a better story to tell? Can you talk
Right.
about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, the bigger, better, braver is um, moving beyond your comfort zone,
Mm.
getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and choosing you, like saying yes to you. So this is an opportunity for you to grow, for you to have compassion, for you to heal, for you to forgive, and for you to fix what wasn't working for your partner and for you. Like you both can do that. So being bigger, better, braver in this instant is saying, you know what? It's actually on some levels would be easier if I just said, screw you, you're out of here, pack your bags and go. I'm going to do the bigger, better, braver thing to stay and hope that my marriage is going to actually get bigger, better by my being braver
Yeah.
and by looking at what's not working and not just being the victim in my story. So bigger, better, braver is all about getting out of the victim mode
Mm.
to make other choices for yourself. And it's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the key there. I mean, the getting out of the victim mode. I mean, I think that's sometimes when you see people stuck years down the road and you hear them talk and you see how they're living, you say, I mean, it's easy to conclude, oh, you're still a victim. You see yourself as a victim in this. That needs to
Yeah.
change, or else our story is
Yeah.
going to be just kind of sad, I think, for the rest of our
Yeah.
lives.
Or I'll hear them tell a story. There'll be new clients of mine. They'll be telling me a story and I'll be like, wow. And when did that happen? 20 years ago.
Mm.
And I'm saying, you gotta let that one go. Like nobody is the same person they were 20 years ago. If you're still holding on to that, you're still back there. So where's your growth been in the last 20 years? If you're still, that's the story you're still talking about. You're wearing it like a backpack with 100 pounds on it and trying to hike up a mountain. You're not going to move.
Yeah. If someone's listening to this, either as an individual, someone who's been betrayed, or maybe a couple, and they like what you're saying, and they're saying, yeah, I need to hear more of that, or I need to figure that out. How do I live that bigger, better life? How do I work through this disaster and actually embrace it as an opportunity for the kind of change I need in my life, or to work on that marriage 2.0? I mean, where would you send them? What are the opportunities that you provide for people like that?
Well, I coach one-on-one and I coach couples and I do weekend boot camps that are, I'm a relational life therapy coach from Terry Real. I recommend anybody read any of Terry's book, Fierce Intimacy, The New Rules of Marriage, Us. Um, their Fierce Intimacy is just an audible, but it's great. It's how I start all my clients. I teach courses on just the relationship skills. That's what you learn in the boot camp. And I do those online as well in groups of like 20 and less people over a 10-week period. All of those give you the skills without the deep inner dive to your inner child wounds that actually contribute to your relationship and why you do the losing strategies you do. So if you sort of have a good enough relationship, but you want to make it better, any of the skill work is going to get you there. If you have deeper work that lots of people will say, my partner was abused, or my partner had a horrific childhood, or I had a horrific childhood, and those traumas are coming up in your marriage, then I suggest the one-on-one, well, it's actually 2-on-1 with me. And then with me, I do the couples work. I generally do the inner child work in front of the couple so that they really understand, wow, so my partner's not doing this to me. They're doing the only thing that part of their brain can do when they're triggered.
Yeah.
And so that leaves more compassion and flexibility and blending and leaning in for both parties. The work is amazing. I love Terry Real's work. I think I have people that will say they've been to therapists for the last 10 years, and 6 to 8 months, they're gone. They're not, you're good to go. Call me if you have a problem. And
So you that's virtual work that you do through online video.
Mhm.
Are the boot camps in person, or is that virtual?
The boot camps are in person. Sometimes I do an online boot camp, but I've switched now to the 10 weeks because I feel like there's something good about, first of all, if you've got kids and responsibilities, you might not be able to go away or even be on Zoom for 2 full days. It's kind of, and I'm feeding it to you piecemeal, so you get to work on it every week and come back and say, hey, we tried that feedback wheel of yours and didn't really work right, or I tried to take a time out and he swore at me about my time out, so you get to work on it in real time instead of a condensed 2 days. But I also have people that will come to my home and we'll do, a whole half day or 2 full days and sort of just like knock it out, instead of once a week for 6 months, they're going to come and we're really going to make some movement in a closed setting. And that works too.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add or want me to?
Well, actually, follow me on social media. So Nancy Pickard, life coach. I'd love people to follow me. And I give away a lot of what I do are in my reels and in my posts. So I try to be generous with the information so you get the help without ever having to come to me. It's a lot cheaper. And no, just that, when I was younger, I used to think, oh, if my partner ever cheated on me, that'd be it. And now in my old age, I no longer believe that infidelity is the worst thing that can happen to a marriage. And if you've got the stamina to stay in it and do the work, I truly believe you can have an even better marriage than you had the first time.
There's my introduction right there. That'll be up front. Do you have any ideas about what you think is the worst thing in a marriage?
Well, sometimes the ending of the marriage could be the worst thing in the marriage, right? I
don't know if I have an answer to that. I just wonder if you'd.
Yeah. I feel really bad for people who get into a situation where they don't believe they can leave the marriage. So like women who gave up working and now don't make the money, and they're afraid for them and their children if they leave. I would say feeling like you have to leave and also having no power and being in a very psychologically patriarchal existence would be is a pretty bad thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for what you do and for being willing to share it in the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
That's great. Yeah, I was kind of pushing on some of the stuff that you said. you were saying in your experience, and kind of we're off the part that I'm using now, but just wanted to talk to you a little bit that, in your experience, people or couples that have experienced infidelity, it usually comes out of problems that are already in their relationship or in their marriage. And I think that's probably true most of the time, but there are a lot of experiences I come with where, no marriage is perfect, but by all accounts, by all objective accounts, that's a pretty good marriage. And
Good
the person,
marriage.
yeah. And well, as an example, when I started the relaunch of the season, the first 3 episodes are an interview with a woman that I call Elisa. That's not her real name. I'm about ready to do a 5-year follow-up with her interview. But she came to see me not thinking there was an affair. She's just like, I just want to come. What can I do in my part of the marriage relationship? Because things just seem to be off. And I began to suspect, I think they're off because there's a gravity pulling your husband away. But, she was one who said, we got along well. We agreed on how we raised the children. Our sex life was good. We traveled. We enjoyed the same vacations from her perspective. But, he was in a band and he was working with someone for years, had this secret thing going on with this other woman. And I don't think it was a problem in their marriage. I think it was. And I think in my own story, my marriage wasn't perfect either, but it wasn't the problem of my marriage. It was a problem in me that I need to figure out. In fact, when I look back on it now,
Right.
Even the things I were kind of critical or upset about in my marriage, I was probably more responsible for those things than my wife ever was.
Right. And we work a lot on, I'm going to turn this off because I have trouble hearing you. I feel this whole time, it kind of feels like I'm in a bomb shelter kind of thing. But what we didn't say, which would have been probably good to say too, is that, look, affairs are a fantasy. They're a separation from real life. You can't really compete with how good they feel compared to the everydayness of your bills and your children and your fights, and you can't compare the two.
No.
And a lot of times it just happens and it feels so good that you go with it. And then it takes you down this rabbit hole that you never meant to be in. But in the moment, it's like having ice cream. In the moment, it feels good until you get on the scale the next day. But in that moment, it feels good. So I think that if the person themselves doesn't feel good about themselves and they're looking to numb out and they're looking for a quick fix, they're going to go for the affair because it feels good. Affairs are fun. They can be.
Yeah. And if that's the measure of intimacy and connection and feeling good, then the remedy for that is to just go from one relationship to the next. One affair to the next, because that's the only way to experience that high over and over again.
Exactly. So it's complicated, and I feel really bad for people even who have emotional affairs. That's even, on some level, the physical is not as bad as the emotional. They're all of a sudden feeling connected to this other woman. And when they come to me, even though they never have stepped out of their marriage physically, I'll say, I need you to promise me that for the next 10 weeks, you're not going to speak to that person because I can't compete with that person. So if you want to actually give this a try, that's the commitment I need from you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're willing to do that and step in and give it a try, I'll do everything I can to support this marriage.
I have the same standards. There's a fair amount of fallout in that, though, because a lot of people just can't stay, and sometimes I'm suspecting, I know you're telling me you're not, but it seems like maybe you are reconnecting with them.
I know. Don't you find, I find that these people had this whole secret life, and now that it's out, and I'm asking them to be truthful with their partner, they like vomit out so much information that I can't even believe what's coming out of their mouth. Like
Yeah.
they lied for 10 years and now every truth is like
Sometimes that happens.
a headlamp, right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's like the betrayed spouse. Wait, I wasn't even asking those questions. La 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 la.
Right,
That's too much
right. Too much
information.
information. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all
Right.
that's really stuff that you have to carefully step through, I mean,
Yeah, I know.
it can sure be messy, but I think we talked a little bit about my work is I'm really focusing on the ones who are the betrayers, not only just being honest about the affair stuff, but let's use this, like you say, this is an opportunity for something different, but you've got to, let's stop. Instead of just having all your energy going, okay, how do I get past this and just get back to, giving my spouse assurance and let's get back to our marriage again. Like, if you slow down, there's some things to learn. And it probably is going to be going back down in the basement and looking at some of that, the shadow work, the stuff from before. What are those things you've always kept down there? And it's the hidden things. Let's understand, let's shine light on it. Some of that stuff needs to be redeemed. Some of it needs to be chucked away, but you need to be authentic and honest about it so that you're not just trying to build over top of all of that and keep it down there again. Because it keeps popping up sometimes.
You call that ice cream on poop. And then the other thing you just hit on that's important is that the betrayer, they just want to move on. I'm done. I'm good.
Of course. Yeah. That's why I'm changing my focus, because and it's so easy. I mean, they can say the right things and they can be genuinely remorseful and sorry, but okay, I'm sorry, just what do I need to do? And let's move on. But I'm trying to slow that process down, saying, okay, if you really long-term want something that's different, there are some things you have to really work on and be honest about. Let's, Dr. Omar Minwala, I don't know if I mentioned to him before, but he's done a lot of research in this area. He talks about the secret sexual basement. I apply that much broader than just the sexual secrets, but other things from our past that we just tend to shove down and don't talk about, sometimes don't even acknowledge ourselves. But slowing down and dealing with all that, so there's integrity and authenticity and the ability and willingness to be vulnerable again, then they're able to bring something much different to the healing of their relationship.